face particular difficulties in access to HIV and AIDS prevention, care, and treatment.
We know, we care.
We're taking action.
We can all do our part.
To raise the awareness of the impact of HIV on women and girls.
To promote the role of women and girls in tackling the epidemic. To encourage women and girls to tell their stories.
To increase the confidence of women and girls.
Governments. And each year, the United Nations asks us to make the commitment to their theme, their global theme on HIV and AIDS. For 2004, that theme is Women, Girls, HIV, and AIDS. It asks us to explore how gender inequality fuels the AIDS epidemic. It asks us to make the commitment to assuring equal access to HIV care, treatment, and prevention. But this year's theme also has a tagline. It's "Have you heard me today?" You see, in Los Angeles, women are still a minority when it comes to HIV and AIDS infections, more so than most places in the world, but their numbers are rising steadily. Have you heard me today?
Have you heard me today?
Well, women represent only 5% of the AIDS cases diagnosed in the city of Los Angeles in 1991 and 92. That number went from 5 to 13% in less than a decade. The numbers continue to rise. Have you heard me today?
Have you heard me this day?
Because women's fight for attention to this rise and the resources needed to address it often goes unheard. You see, women are twice as likely as men to become infected and contract HIV from a single act of unprotected sex. But they often remain dependent on male cooperation to protect themselves from infection. Have you heard me today?
Have you heard me this day?
Women and girls are particularly affected by the social and economic consequences of the HIV and AIDS epidemic. Nonetheless, they've taken on a major role in sharing the burden of HIV and AIDS-related care. Have you heard me today?
Have you heard me?
And still, well-meaning men like me get up and make speeches like this, and we talk about women and girls as they and them, as if we're only talking to other men. So forgive me that transgression. For today and the future, we're talking to you. Have you heard me today?
Have you heard me? Have you heard me?
And while women are leaders in many areas of the AIDS response, too often, interventions are not adopted to your realities. Too often, they leave you at greater risk. Have you heard me today?
Have you heard me today?
Still, factors that make you, women and girls, more vulnerable to HIV infection can be changed, giving sufficient attention, resources, and commitment. So let's make that commitment.
The commitment.
Today, you will be heard. Please welcome Ms. Zion Is.
Good afternoon. This is a little portion of my story, and I put it in song form / spoken word. It's called Mr. Right Now. My mama said to wait for Mr. Right. But oh my Lord, I'm bored day and night, holding tight. She said, girl, wait for the man that would grow with you. But I'm getting tired of holding on. I'm done being strong. I want Mr. Right now. Mr. Right Now. I'm going to give you a general description. That way, if you see him, you send him in my direction. He's tall and he's dark and he's handsome. Drives a Mercedes-Benz, got lots of ends and then some. I won't keep him long, only calling his phone when I'm lonesome. I heard what my mama said, but you know what? She had my daddy laying next to her in her bed. I want him now. So I'll tell y'all how I plan to do this. If y'all just sit tight a second, I'll walk you through this. I'll work 9 to 5 till TGI Friday. Go to my boss for my not enough pay, and I'll add up my bills with intentions to play. Consistent to drown out what my conscience did say. I'd go to the mall with this money I got, get something hot to wear to the spot. I won't worry about the condoms I forgot, because I'm counting on the strength of this orthonovum shot. I'm at the club now, and I think I see loot. I'm talking about old boy over there in that gray pinstripe suit. Eye contact was bomb, and chemistry was on. Not much for conversation, it just kind of went, hey, let's get away and get a room on the other side of town. Hey, shorty, I was fiending for you. To which I responded, hey, let's get a room, shorty, we can freak something if you're down. Hey, daddy, I was fiending for you. So it's on, and now he's gone, and I'm all alone getting tested. The doctor's results came and had me completely arrested. I'm shocked, and I'm asking them too late questions. You know, who, what, when, where, and how. The doctor calms me and assures me those answers really don't matter now. Let's be grateful you tested negative for the virus HIV. So I reply, I suppose I feel lucky that I only got hepatitis C. In the back of my mind, I'm wondering, what the heck? Was it the blood transfusion, them needles full of blood, or that all unprotected sex? I could call it the work of the adversary, but I've decided instead to just go get my treatments in January. God knows I had lots of help passing judgment on myself. I heard this statement every day of my life. Maybe this is my answer to why. My father said I'd never be anything. So I rationalize how I gotta get beside the next guy with a diamond ring. Now somehow I rationalize that this compromise ain't gonna last for very long. And looking back on my life, I have twice become the wife of Mr. Wrong. And looking back on my life, I have twice become the wife of Mr. Wrong. Thank you.
Ms. Zion is. Thank you again. We're going to add a moment to our agenda because we have a guest here. I wanted to at least take a minute to say hello to you, someone you should know, as we build partnerships, growing and additional partnerships in the fight against HIV and AIDS. Joining us this morning is Mr. Robert J. Polito. He's the Director for the Center of Faith-Based and Community Initiatives at the United States Department of Health and Human Services. Mr. Polito.
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you all for having me today. It's a great day to be in LA to celebrate all the great work that you all have done, community leaders all across this city, in the fight against HIV and AIDS. Our role at the federal government is to basically support you, champion your cause, and get out of the way, and let the community have the resources that they need to do the great work that they do, walking the streets days and night, and counseling those who need a friend and need someone to do whatever they have to be done, if it's taking them to get tested, or if it's counseling, or if it's to the doctor, or if it's a support group. That work all gets done at the community level, not in this room, certainly not in the rooms where I sit in Washington, D.C. So our role is to champion your cause, lift your arms up so yet again today and tomorrow you can continue the great work of walking the streets and loving on people the way you do. Thanks for all that you do, and we're here to celebrate you and all that you do. Thanks for having me, and thanks for caring so much about all the folks in your neighborhood.
Thank you again for joining us today. This fall, we began working with many of the mayors of Los Angeles' sister cities and the consul generals from their respective countries on a video project demonstrating the similarities and challenges we share around the globe in dealing with the HIV epidemic. This program was supposed to be part of the core of today's World AIDS Day event. We've only really just begun that work, because a couple months ago, I actually thought that it only took 2 months to put together an international video on HIV and AIDS, including mailing all the videos from our sister cities. That said, we have received some incredible DVDs and videos from our sister cities. Some were able to really get it together in a matter of weeks. We received letters from up north in Canada to way down south in New Zealand saying we're interested in this work, in this collaboration, and we're going to be partnering throughout the year. Today we're going to preview a small segment of some of the videos that came in, and we're going to ask ourselves what policies work in this country and what policies work in other cities and countries that we can all be sharing and learning from each other. To tell you more on the Sister Cities project, please welcome Los Angeles City Council member Tom LaBonge.
Stephen, thank you. Give Stephen a big hand and all the people who are involved here. Good morning, good afternoon to everybody, and our man from Washington. I think it's like 68 degrees now. It really is nice and warm in the city, Southern California. It's good to have a man from Washington out here. Take the good wishes of Los Angeles, but we need to do more for our cities, especially in this battle against HIV and AIDS. And I appreciate what the President tried to do in Africa, which is so important in other parts of the world, but we need help in our cities. Thank you very much. Good morning. I'd like to call my great colleague, Eric Garcetti, who I share just for a few remarks. Please welcome Mr. Garcetti, my colleague here. I did want to give you an opportunity to address this great group.
I really don't want to speak very long. I just want to thank everybody for being here and dedicate my own participation this day to my cousin Jimmy, who unfortunately was a young Latino, proud, openly gay man who died of AIDS very early in the epidemic, and just dedicate this work to him. And thank you, because you're saving lives today. There are young girls and young women today, as well as boys and men, whose lives will be saved because of what we do right here in this city. Thank you.
Eric, thank you very much. As mentioned, our Sister City program started a little history back in 1958. Then President Eisenhower felt it's very important for cities to get together, because sometimes on the federal levels they deal in one area, but in a city level it's right down to the street. And from that program, Los Angeles has been a champion of our Sister City program. Over 20 different sister cities have a relationship with Los Angeles, and it's special worldwide. And Stephen, I want to thank you as president of Sister Cities, a role that I cherish here in Los Angeles, that we've reached out to our sister cities for this effort here, because it's so important to learn what others are doing on that. Nagoya is our oldest sister city, and we're celebrating since 1959, that relationship with Nagoya. Working together, I truly believe with our sister cities, we could get information out and new ideas. And here in Los Angeles, I think we're the cutting edge, and our county has certainly done a great job in their efforts to try to bring this to the attention of all. But we could learn from each other. And today, joining us, and I'd like to ask them to come up with me just at the podium, please, the Consul General from New Zealand, the Consul General from Croatia, the Consul General from South Africa, the Consul General from Lithuania, and also the Deputy Consul General from Japan. If you could just please stand with me for a moment. I'll introduce them individually in just a moment. But I think it's important just to see, although come up here with me, please. I think give them a hand. I'm going to start with Robert Taylor from New Zealand, but ask each to just say a brief minute, if you would, just on your thoughts, how important this is, and how we could strike a match, if I could call it, in bringing us all together here. Robert?
Thanks, Tom. Some people think that New Zealand is a small country, far, far away down there in the Pacific. But in fact, HIV/AIDS is very much a significant problem for us, more so in those immediate countries, the smaller South Pacific Island countries that neighbour us. Some of the HIV/AIDS rates in those countries resemble those in Africa today. So New Zealand is fighting very hard to get some messages out there, particularly when it comes to women and young adults. And I'd just like to thank the Council and the Sister Cities Association for putting this day on, and you have our full support. Thank you.
Sandra Jurek from Croatia.
It is also my pleasure to be here today among you, because wherever we are coming from each country, as Croatia is a small country in Europe on Mediterranean, but we all are faced with this terrible problem, and we all see how important it is to protect people, to raise awareness of this problem, and to understand those who are suffering of this. I appreciate very much this event, and we will do also to help and to prevent what we can in preventing this terrible illness. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Jeanette? Jeanette Afu.
I said, let me thank you, the City of Los Angeles, and all the organizers, the people who put this program together. This disease has touched all of us. Not too long ago, I was saying to people, I have never seen anybody with HIV/AIDS. Until 6 months ago, my own brother was diagnosed and died of HIV/AIDS, and it's a huge challenge. After the defeat of apartheid, I think we appreciate the support that we continue to get from everyone, because as a new democracy, it's an insurmountable problem. We can't deal with it alone. The whole of the African continent is afflicted by this horrible catastrophe. So we thank you for your efforts, and we continue that you shall not, we hope that you shall not tire of the efforts that you continue to put. And people first is what is important to us, and we thank you for your consideration of our plight. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeanette. Toshiro Kanokata.
Well, first of all, I'm very glad to be here with you today to share this memorable moment. And our government is quite aware that how serious this epidemic is. And we created a new law in Japan in order to avoid expansion of this epidemic domestically. And as well as we emphasize not to discriminate the HIV affected people in the primary education. And as far as the international contribution is concerned, we have been making a significant amount of financial contribution to the WHO or other organizations, and we will continue our efforts. And finally, I thank you very much for the City of Los Angeles to have organized this very important and impressive occasion. Thank you.
Thank you. And last, Vitakaras Kanakanas, Lithuania.
I too come or represent a small country, and until I did some research into this problem, I didn't know that we really had a problem in our own country. And for this I have to credit Los Angeles, sister city, AIDS-Day program, because now I know what we're really facing in our future. And unfortunately, like one of the speakers earlier mentioned at the beginning of opening of this event, the number of HIV/AIDS cases among the women is increasing, and the same is true in our country. But I'm happy to share with you that our college youth is very active in combating AIDS, and they have had programs for the last 5 years, from what I learned now, drives to have the young people go and get tested for HIV/AIDS, hoping that this way we can discover the causes and stop what causes it in the early beginnings. So thank you again, Los Angeles, for getting me involved in this issue.
Well, thank you very much. Let's thank all the Consular Corps. Our city of 4 million people, 42% of all the people who live in Los Angeles are born outside the United States. It's a very welcoming spot. This city next to New York and Tokyo has the most number of consulates, over 89, which represent the great diversity of the world. So this is a great effort here as we try to do, and I want to thank all the Consular Corps. And Stephen, I want to thank you, because as you spoke of earlier, attention, resources, and commitment, and we all have the commitment. We've got to keep the attention and find the resources to do that, but also AIDS and HIV knows no borders. And as we see, as our city is international, as our country is truly an international city, we could see that we have to do more, and this is a great way to do that. I want to thank you all very much, and I know we're going to have a video coming up here right now from our sister city of Berlin, and I don't know if the Consul General is here, but Stephen, I'm going to call you back, or should I introduce this film? Let's just see this film here from our sister city of Berlin and the importance, and take this as a message right now. Thank you.
We fear the situation in Africa is approaching a human catastrophe. With great concern, we see the increase of AIDS infections in Eastern Europe and in Central Asia. Germany has a very good health care system. So the problem is not as dramatic in Germany as it is in the regions I just mentioned. But we have an increase of AIDS also in Germany by about 2,000 cases each year. We had 1,500 more cases in men, which is 75%, and 500 more cases in women, which is about 25%. We see infections rising among another risk group, which are the infected drug users. We have needle exchange programs, and they are accepted by the public. We have many safer sex and anti-drug campaigns going on in Germany. The slogan nearly everybody knows is "Don't give AIDS a chance." And I think most people are exposed to these campaigns. And I must say the level of knowledge about AIDS in Germany is very high. I can hardly imagine of any high school or university student who has not heard of the AIDS problem. Our capital, Berlin, which is LA's sister city, has a gay mayor, and he is, of course, part of a special risk group. So under his patronage, so to speak, the city has established a program which is called HIV in Dialogue. It's a program that is supported by all the parties, all social groups in the city, and I think it works quite well. Prostitution is legal in Germany, and especially in a city such as Berlin. And all the registered prostitutes have to check regularly for AIDS, and they all must use condoms. And I think in Germany, the use of condoms is accepted for both men and women. The increase of infections in large cities in 2003 rose by about 30%, which is very high, and this is of great concern.
That was Dr. Heinz Wendler, who is the Consul General here representing Germany. So that was a very important message that we could see. Let's give them a hand and for that production. Stephen, before I turn it back to you, I'd like to introduce my great colleague, Wendy Gruhl, who's a champion on the City Council, for some remarks. Wendy was just able to come down from committee and join us. Please welcome Councilmember Gruhl.
Thank you, Tom, and I'm so pleased to be here today. David Schulman and I from the City Attorney's Office were just talking. I had the pleasure of working for Mayor Bradley starting in 1983. And in 1985, when the County of Los Angeles would not establish an AIDS commission, when they refused to acknowledge that AIDS was an issue that affected our communities, Tom Bradley stood up. He stood up with Supervisor Ed Edelman and said, we have to do something. This is a crisis. And it wasn't politically the right thing to do in some people's eyes, because AIDS issue was something that people didn't want to talk about. But Tom Bradley stood up, and I was only 22 years old, so it was a few years ago. But he was somebody who taught me about the importance of speaking out on an issue, as did so many other people. And so we were successful in the city of Los Angeles, creating the first AIDS coordinator in this community. That was critically important here in the city of Los Angeles. And Phil Wilson was there. They taught me a lot about the importance of being a strong advocate. And Reverend Carl Bean, who came into our offices in Mayor Bradley's office and came in and was just somebody who had moved to Los Angeles and said, this is something we need to do, and particularly the AIDS issue is affecting the minority community, and there's no one out there who's talking about that, and created the Minority AIDS Project. And so I stand here as a council member. I never thought at that time that I would be an elected official, but I stand here today to say we have a lot more work to do. We have a lot more education, and that women are the fastest growing number of AIDS victims in this country and in this world. And as elected officials and as people who care about the entire community, and I think the entire community is our world, we have to speak out and remind people on World AIDS Day that this problem still exists. People are losing their lives, and it can be prevented. But we cannot close our eyes. We cannot go back to the days where people don't talk about it, where people won't be able to say, here's how you prevent AIDS from happening. And Tom Bradley, other thing that he did that he taught me is we spoke out. The County of Los Angeles refused to pay for condoms and bleach at the time. And he said, we're going to use city dollars. And we're going to do this. And he stood up and testified before Congress and others and said, it's important. So I'm here to say thank you to people like Tom Bradley, to people like some of my friends here sitting who were in Mayor Bradley's office when I was there, and those leaders who refused to take no for an answer, who refused to say, we're going to just put it under the rug. So thank you so much. My apologies for being late. Thank you, Tom, for letting me be here. And I know we have some presentations to make as well. But I wanted to say that our work is not done, and you have not only Tom LaBonge and Eric Garcetti and so many of our other council colleagues here to say we're going to fight with you, and we will stand side by side. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. You're good. Right now, it's my pleasure to introduce someone representing the California Latino AIDS Advisory Board. Hamina Morgan will speak to us concerning women and HIV, redefining boundaries. Please welcome Ms. Morgan.
Hello. I know some of you from having worked with you for a long time in this AIDS field. I've been a provider and worked in the field for over 10 years, all over California and also in New York. So I'm glad to see some of you here. I understand that all of us here have a particular role in this fight that we endure against HIV and AIDS. And our roles are uniquely different and equally as important. So as I stand here before you today, one of the things I think is when the AIDS epidemic first became an important issue in my eyes, I was about 12 years old. And this was in 1984 when lots of protests were going on in San Francisco. That's where I was living at. And 20 years have passed since then, and we've learned some things, and we are still facing some of the same challenges. So it's no accident that then today, the slogan for World AIDS Day is, "Have you heard me today?" Where voices of women still many times go silenced, and we're going to talk about a little bit what that silence has done to us. Well, AIDS has become a global scourge affecting communities and governments in unseemly fashion. I think we can all agree with that. At the end of 2003, UNAIDS estimated that there were approximately 38 million people living with HIV worldwide. 48% of these adults are women. This ranges from a high percentage of 57% of all living cases in sub-Saharan Africa being found amongst women, to 49% in the Caribbean, 36% in Latin America, 34% in Eastern Europe and Central Asia, 30% in South and Southeast Asia, compared to the 25% of the combined region of Northern America and Western Europe. All of these percentages have increased immensely over the years. A new report released just last week by UNAIDS and the World Health Organization has reminded us yet again that there's no single AIDS epidemic, and there's no single AIDS epidemic worldwide either. In fact, what we're facing is diverse epidemics at different stages in different parts of the world. The fact that women are more physically susceptible to HIV infection is obvious and a known fact. Male to female HIV transmission during sex is twice as likely to occur as female to male transmission. Women's vulnerability to HIV is primarily due to inadequate knowledge about AIDS, insufficient access to HIV prevention methods, inability to negotiate safer sex, and a lack of female-controlled HIV prevention method, which we've been waiting for a very long time, I think. Additionally, as we know, women do not enjoy the same rights and access to employment, property, and education as men, and are more likely to face sexual violence. In LA, with over 4,000 square miles and a blend of urban and rural communities, the geographic diversity of our county creates a complex backdrop for the provision of HIV care services. As was mentioned before, over 40% of the people that live here are not from here. We are truly an immigrant community, and we remain being so. The Office of AIDS Programs and Policy of LA estimates that approximately 1/3 of HIV-infected individuals in the county are unaware of their HIV status. At the end of 2003, at least 5,000 women were estimated to be living with HIV or AIDS in LA. The proportion of new AIDS cases reported among adult women of all ethnicities here in LA has increased from 6% of all cases in 1994 to 10.5% in 1997 to 13%, which is where it's at currently. This is more than doubled. So we have failed in addressing the epidemic for women. More than 3/4 of all women diagnosed with AIDS in LA County have been women of color. AIDS is the 4th leading cause of death for women between the ages of 25 and 44 living in LA. More than 17% of the total AIDS cases are among adolescents and young adults. The most important obstacle to providing prevention services to women is the denial of being at personal risk. In many parts of the world, marriage and long-term monogamous relationships do not protect women from HIV. The literature documents the need for women to learn more to effectively communicate with their partners about sex. We also know that substance abuse is a major cofactor in the infections for HIV, especially among women. Sharing needles and trading sex for drugs are two ways that substance abuse can lead to HIV and other STD transmission. Another difficult challenge that we face when serving women is physical and sexual violence. There were over 17,000 domestic violence incidents that resulted in arrest in LA County in 2002. The large number of women who are victims of domestic violence each year may be especially unlikely or unable to negotiate safer sex practices in their relationships given the huge power imbalance that they have with their partners. In addition, needs assessments just here in LA County have shown that a very high percentage of women of color with HIV do not know how to access culturally appropriate services to address their physical and mental health needs, even when they're aware of personal health problems. These issues aren't that different than the issues that are faced by our sister cities and around the world. We have different resources and our problems get expressed in different ways, but we're facing some of the same issues around power, access, and being heard. There's a gap of in the dialogue and availability of resources between developed and developing countries. The developing world shoulders around 90% of the global AIDS epidemic. Here we heard a cry out for help earlier today. Brazil began the 21st century with an estimated 600,000 people living with AIDS. India accounts for 40% of the world's poor. Currently, 25% of pregnant women in Zambia are living with AIDS. Egypt has identified that one of the biggest challenges they face in maintaining and strengthening a national response are the competing priorities of the social, political, economic, and health fronts. How do you deal with an epidemic that really challenges us in so many different ways when we have scarce resources, when we have so many other things going on as well? We live in a time of globalized economies and global relationships. AIDS epidemics cross national boundaries. Joint efforts such as the Border Area Needle Exchange Program run by China and Vietnam since 2002 have showed a drop in the use of non-sterile injection equipment. In 1 month, it dropped from 61% to 30%. This shows that we can be true partners with our border countries, with each other, with our global partners, with our sister cities. We can start that dialogue and have a real, tangible effect in this epidemic. The AIDS epidemic in Mexico affects us because we share a border with them. It affects us because we have families that are living divided by a border. It affects us because we share the reality of having migrant workers, migrant economies, migrant families, and migrant health. And all of these things pose their own unique challenges. But in order to solve these challenges, we cannot just look to complete the puzzle on our own. Other countries hold other pieces of the puzzle that we must make fit as well. Denial has broad repercussions, and denial needs to be confronted not only within borders, but also outside of them. Political denial of the existence of AIDS does not only affect the individuals living with AIDS, but also communities, economies, and neighboring countries. Dr. Pio, head of the World Health Organization, has stated recently that for many women in developing countries, the ABC prevention approach, meaning abstinence, being faithful and reducing the number of sexual partners, and condom use, is insufficient. Strategies to address gender inequalities are urgently needed, and concrete action is necessary to prevent violence against women. AIDS has become not only an issue of public health, but also one of labor, economic growth, child and family welfare, affecting global communities deep within their cultures and challenging deep tradition and social norms. AIDS is compromising entire countries' financial stability by affecting individuals at the peak of their productive years. The solution then needs to be equally encompassing and responsive to each of its consequences. The lessons we've learned in LA in the last 20 years are not that different than those of the other sister cities and other countries around the world. AIDS challenges us in what to look at in order to succeed. It challenges us in that one must address poverty, urbanization, social stigma, sexuality, family structures, government institutions, and border issues as well. We need to understand how to apply relevant and accurate prevention messages and knowledge within the context of women's everyday lives, not just what we want them to do. Women's prevention interventions need to address substance abuse and domestic violence issues within their programming. HIV prevention and treatment, substance abuse prevention, and sexually transmitted disease treatment and prevention services must be better integrated to take advantage of the multiple opportunities for intervention. The approach must include global, governmental, and local forces in order to be effective. So I stand here before you today, challenging each one of you in your unique roles, be them working with individuals that are living with HIV and AIDS, if doing prevention work with youth or with women, being a policymaker, being at a summit, being wherever it is that you find yourself, is always asking yourself the question that is being posed to you here today, which is, have you heard me today? Have you heard me today? AIDS is not just about biology, it's about lives, it's about poverty, it's about whether or not, and I will quote a former client of mine, it's more important for me not to get beat that day than to demand that my partner use a condom with me. It's about giving women an opportunity to go self-express, giving an opportunity for them to be heard in a world that often silences their voices. So as you sit there looking at policy briefs, or looking at the latest policy action alert, or looking at your client face on, ask yourself, am I really hearing what I'm being told? Have you heard me today? Thank you so much.
And so we come to our video, Women Alive, Living with HIV. I'm going to do a quick thank you to a few folks as we cue it up. I have to, of course, thank Mayor Hahn and the Los Angeles City Council, the staffs of the Commission on the Status of Women, the Commission on Disability, the AIDS coordinator staff, my staff for their work on this, Channel 35 for their efforts and support. It's really important that I thank the producer of the video, Cheryl Kahn, who was here. She has done, there's Cheryl. You'll understand when you see this video what an incredible job she's done. So let's thank her now. I need to also thank, and I'm going to ask our city council members who are with us to join me in this briefly. We need to thank the service providers who are truly committed to making sure women, especially women of color, receive the services they need and deserve. So I told them that was the last thing on the agenda, but we have shifted it around. So I'm going to ask the staff, certainly executive directors and staff from Women Alive, Minority AIDS Project, and the East Los Angeles Women's Center to please come join us with Councilmember Labange and Councilmember Gruhl.
I'd like to ask Deputy Mayor Carmel Sella to come up and join us too. Give the Deputy Mayor a big hand, who's been very good. And David Schulman, the Deputy City Attorney, come up here. Give him a big hand, he helps us out a lot. Miss Ridley Thomas, you come too because you're a supervising city attorney. I got to get that down there. Give Miss Ridley Thomas a hand on this here. This is a city team here. Councilmember Gruhl.
Thank you, Tom. It's my pleasure. I get to present the proclamation to the East Los Angeles Women's Center. Beginning as a small hotline in 1974, the East LA Women's Center provides a variety of services for women. These services focus on sexual and domestic violence and HIV/AIDS. They offer crisis intervention, prevention, education, and advocacy in order to address the needs of our multicultural and multilingual community. With an emphasis on the Latino community, they work to empower and give hope to individuals, families, and the community at large. Will we please welcome and thank Alva Marina, who is the Executive Director of the East Los Angeles Women's Center.
The Minority AIDS Project. Founded in 1985, Archbishop Carl Bean Minority AIDS Project was the first community-based HIV/AIDS organization established to manage for people of color in the United States. And I remember the fight that you had to get the zoning approval to be on West Adams in the West Adams district. That little fight is small compared to the fight that we have today in trying to help people meet the challenge of HIV and AIDS. I just wanted to, on behalf of the mayor, James Hahn, and myself and all the members of the City Council, salute the Carl Bean Minority AIDS Project for their work, which has truly been inspirational. And we want to ask and thank Carol Martin and the staff to come up and receive this commendation. Come up here, Deputy Mayor. I want the Deputy Mayor to say a few words, too.
I just want to thank all of you. Today, World AIDS Day is always a somber day, but it's also always a hopeful day, a day that we join together in common purpose and common recommitment of working together to fight the disease, to help each other through education, and to take on all the multiple challenges of women and girls with AIDS. So I just want to thank you for your dedication and everything you do every day. Thank you.
Yeah, you betcha, Carol.
On behalf of Minority AIDS Project, we'd like to thank the city as well, because we know without your support, we are lost. We have a big fight, and we address it every day. We know that prevention does work, and so we just keep on trying. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Steve, I think I'm going to vote for Carol. She made the shortest speech. I like that. Carol, thank you for those great words. All of you, congratulations on receiving these awards. All right. Wendy?
Okay, sure. The other organization we'd like to recognize today is Women Alive. Women Alive originally began in 1991 as a support group for positive women in the Los Angeles area. It has since grown to achieve national notoriety as the premier treatment-focused organization for women in the country. A drop-in center for women facing HIV/AIDS and their families, Women Alive is a safe place where women can come together and get support and experience a sense of community, sometimes just to hang out and receive a variety of professional services, peer support groups, and social events. I'd like to welcome and thank Executive Director of Women Alive, Carrie Brodus. You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This award really belongs to the Women Alive staff, and I can't say enough about the support that they constantly give me, the support that they give the women who walk through our doors every day, the support that they give to the children who come to our facility who want to get on computers, who want to do arts and craft. Norma Guerra, Precious Jackson, Kathy Bush, Gloria Perez, Gail, and my favorite, Alicia Avalos, and our one and only male, Ricardo Science.
Okay, get comfortable, folks. It's video time. Now that we've thanked the city folk, we've thanked the service providers, we've thanked the producer, we have to thank the women that are in this video, because they've opened up their lives. And you'll see what I mean by that in a minute. They have opened up their lives so we could all learn. This video isn't pretty. It's not easy. It's not sugar-coated. It talks about women living with HIV and their lives, how they think, how they feel. And I think how women feel is not something that we have really integrated into our prevention practices in the way we need to. So with that said, please roll our video.
There are moments in people's lives that can change them forever. For these women, the biggest life-changing moment by far was when they got the news they thought they'd never hear.
They said, well, your HIV results came back positive. And I felt like my belly just dropped to the floor, and it was devastating.
She said,
well, your test came back positive. I said, what kind of test? She said, HIV positive test. And I just bust out and started to cry.
I'm reading it, and I get to a part where it says that he tested positive for HIV, and all of a sudden, my whole world just shattered.
Automatically to myself, I'm finna die. That was my thought. I'm getting ready to die.
47-year-old Betty Knox, HIV positive for 2 years. 33-year-old Precious Jackson, diagnosed 6 years ago. Elizabeth Marte, at 42, the veteran. She's had the virus for 11 years.
I used to really think that only men that were homosexuals got infected. I didn't know that women could get infected at that time, back in the early 90s.
Back then, Elizabeth had been trying to clean up her act after a life lived on the edge. Sexually abused by a neighbor as a child.
We were very poor in the Dominican Republic, so he would often offer me a plate of food in exchange to let him fondle me.
Kicked out by her parents in New York at 17, Elizabeth wound up living with drug dealers, eventually becoming addicted to crack.
It was glamorous at that time, yeah, for a 17-year-old, a lot of money, a lot of, good clubs and a lot, just luxury. And then what happened was I ended up getting hooked on cocaine. Little did I know that years later I would be having sex for a hit of crack on the streets. And I was getting maybe $3-4 for sex, just in order to get a hit of crack.
She had 3 children by 3 different men. Settled in with a new boyfriend, Elizabeth's doctor gave her an HIV test. It came back positive. Elizabeth says her boyfriend never admitted he was infected.
I was very resentful. I used to fantasize just getting a gun and shooting him. Yeah, he knew he had it. He died of AIDS, like less than a year later after I met him, after he infected me.
Bitter and devastated, Elizabeth fell into a deep depression, spiraling further into drug and alcohol abuse. After a sympathetic doctor took her into his home, Elizabeth struggled to become sober and deal with her HIV. It's been a long road back and a bumpy one. Elizabeth suffered relapses in her recovery and dangerous lapses in judgment.
When I relapsed on drugs and on crack cocaine, I was having unprotected sex for a long time, for a lot of times. Even after I was diagnosed with the HIV virus during my crack relapse. So I prostituted again after I found out I was HIV positive. I slept with many men. I don't know. Hundreds of guys. It's not that you intentionally want to infect people, but when you're under the influence, all you're thinking is about how to get the next hit. All you're thinking is about doing whatever you can do in order so that you can get some crack cocaine and smoke it.
Elizabeth has no idea whether she infected anyone. Experts do say the virus is not as readily transmitted from women to men. It's more common for men to infect women.
Women are a reservoir, which means that they're more likely to be infected from sexual transmission, because when the infected semen gets into the vaginal vault, it sits there.
While the spread of HIV in the U.S. is frightening, it's even worse in other parts of the world. Worldwide, nearly 38 million people are living with HIV and AIDS, 17 million of them women. In Asia, there are nearly 7.5 million people who are infected, 2 million in Latin America and the Caribbean, 1.3 million in Eastern Europe. A disproportionately high number of cases are in Africa, where 26 million people are infected.
This patient is complaining of productive cough, loss of weight, and diarrhea, lack of appetite. She was treated by the traditional healer 3 weeks ago.
In southern Africa, the virus is so widespread, some countries have trouble keeping track of AIDS deaths. In this South African township, cemeteries are filled with freshly dug graves. Other needs in those poverty-stricken areas, though critical, are nowhere near as serious as the AIDS crisis.
The whole situation begins with AIDS, it ends with AIDS. Things that were here before AIDS, things that are here, will be here after AIDS. The common junk that gets pushed aside, that gets obscured, that gets ignored because AIDS is here.
In a few African nations, nearly 40% of the adult population is infected, and life expectancy is in the early 30s. In those areas, more than twice as many women as men are living with HIV. Experts say the virus is spreading because it's hard to spread the word about how people can protect themselves.
What information regarding the HIV virus itself and AIDS, and as far as how to protect themselves?
the awareness program. A lot of people are not educated like Americans.
Officials have been stepping up efforts to stop the spread of AIDS. Relief organizations like U.S. Doctors for Africa have been helping, offering medical care and supplies and trying to educate the public. While they have been making progress, they still face many obstacles, cultural barriers that make it difficult to even talk about AIDS or the use of condoms.
Even birth control in some cultures, they don't use it because it's against religion. Some people are very religious. Women tend to try to please their husbands and boyfriends rather than being aggressive enough to protect themselves.
And in many cases, if a woman is found to be infected with HIV,
she will be disowned by her family, by her husband. In fact, she might actually be a victim of some kind of criminal activity, which would be including, she could be killed, really.
Those cultural barriers are not as extreme in the U.S., but they do exist. Many women are afraid to even ask their partners to use condoms.
You know, how dare you? You're going to tell me to wear a condom. I'm your husband. Are you doing something? Are you being unfaithful to me? They'll turn around the whole thing and turn it onto the woman. And how are you going to tell your husband, well, you know, I suspect you're having an affair with a man, or you're going out partying and getting drunk in clubs and, you know, spending 3 and 4 or 5 days out of the house and you're coming back drunk and, you know, I need to protect myself. How are they going to say that they are at risk for getting beat up?
In this country, there are still many more men than women who are infected. Of about 950,000 people in America living with HIV and AIDS, 1/4 are women. But the female infection rate has been climbing, especially among Latina and African American women.
Asian women are about 1 in 100,000 might have AIDS. White or Anglo women, 3 in 100,000 might have AIDS. Latinas, 5 in 100,000, 5 to 6 in 100,000, and African Americans, 19 in 100,000.
Those who run programs designed to help stop the spread of AIDS have been starting to notice.
You need to go somewhere else, and you probably need to go soon. We're here on Friday. Yeah, Clinic Oscar Romero is a pretty good place to go.
More and more female IV drug users have been showing up at city-supported needle exchange programs like this one to swap dirty syringes for clean ones and get advice about other services as well.
Let me give you the clinic information in 1 second. Thanks. Can you tip out the tray?
Program directors hope what they're doing cuts down on the practice of sharing needles and the transmission of HIV.
Are you getting these for anybody else or just you? For me. Okay. Heroin? Approximately 30% of new HIV infections are attributed to injection drug use. And that doesn't just mean that the people that actually come in and get their needles are the people who are actually shooting, but it's, you know, their network, their community, their families, and the people around them that are also using their needles and sharing their works.
And now a few programs designed specifically for HIV-positive women have been developed. They are supported with city funding and include the Kumbah program at Minority AIDS Project and Sisters Alive, a partnership between Women Alive and the East LA Women's Center.
The women that we service still believe that it's not going to happen to them because they are married, they are in a monogamous relationship.
That's it for the HIV meds.
This is Women Alive, with cramped offices in a tiny house on an LA residential street. The agency is run by a small staff and volunteers, some HIV positive, some not. One of the most important services they provide, testing for HIV.
And hold it there for 3 minutes.
If a client does test positive, she's invited back for counseling and support groups and to find out what to do next. The first step, finding a doctor or clinic.
Open up.
Debbie Johnson is a nurse practitioner who works primarily with low-income people who are HIV positive.
These medicines, if you take them every day, you should do fine.
She also writes what may be the only online advice column aimed at women living with HIV, called Ask Debbie. The questions have been coming in from all over the world.
Most of the shocking things that I hear from the column is the fact that there are so many women out there that are still so naive and so unaware of what their risk factors are, especially heterosexual transmission.
Both online and in the office, she runs into many HIV-positive women who don't want to take their medication because of possible side effects, thinking it won't hurt to stop. Debbie tells them they're wrong.
None of the medicines that we use kill the virus. All of the medicines do is disable the virus for your own immune system to kick in and get rid of it. And so if you're taking medicines and not taking them, and taking them and not taking them, you're changing your virus. Your virus is becoming resistant to the medications.
And quite a few of her clients and correspondents don't want to use condoms with partners who are also infected because they think it doesn't matter.
I tell my patients who are HIV positive, who are taking their medications, who go into new relationships, and they want to practice unprotected sexual intercourse because they're in a monogamous relationship, and I tell them, you can't. The only person that you can trust is yourself. You cannot trust anybody else is treating you fairly. Those things are out of your control. All you can do is know what you do. So, if you're taking your meds, you don't have to worry about your viral load rebounding on your medicines. But if your partner is not taking their medicines but telling you that they're taking their medicines, and you practice unsafe sexual behavior, you're liable to be reinfected with another strain of the virus and fail the medicines that you're on.
On the issue of whether to use condoms, Debbie tells them not to take no for an answer. 49-year-old Carla Bailey, who's living with full-blown AIDS, couldn't agree more.
I didn't have, I had one partner, okay?
That one partner, a longtime boyfriend she'd planned to marry, infected her with HIV.
Whole world, the bottom fell out, and within a few months it seemed like I lost everything. Job, car, house, all of it. Gone, 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 gone.
Carla says if she knew then what she knows now, she would have gotten to know her boyfriend a lot better before sleeping with him. She advises other women to ask lots of questions and take nothing for granted.
We haven't learned how to talk. We haven't learned how to have that conversation before we have these sexual relationships. We need to learn to date, and I mean really date. Don't touch each other. Find out a lot about each other, especially that past history. That resume is important. I need a resume. I need a resume, okay? And I need a current of everything. What's been going on?
What you don't know don't hurt you.
What you don't know will kill you, okay? What you don't know, kill you. And if they kill you.
The ladies at Women Alive have definitely learned how to talk it out, at least with each other, and no subject is taboo.
He didn't want to use a condom. I'm like, you crazy, you're putting yourself at risk. He's like, okay, you look fine to me.
Every week or two, they talk things out in group therapy.
My relationship at home, everything is on me. Till sometimes I'm overwhelmed with it, till I just want to bust out and I don't know how to tell my mate, look, I need you to help me. I need some help here, okay?
Yeah.
I can't do all of this by myself. I just can't do it. I don't, you know.
So you say you don't know how to say it?
I don't know how to tell him. You know what I'm saying? To get, you need to do something. It's something you need to help me.
Are there points now where it feels like it's still like, I can't believe this happened to me? Sometimes, because to a certain degree, sometimes I wish I could just have a normal life. And the truth of the matter is, a lot of people talk, oh, you can have a normal life now with medication and the good medication. But the truth of the matter, deep inside yourself, you know, you can really never have a real, what they call, quote unquote, normal life. Sometimes there's a part of me in the back that wishes, oh, I wish I would have never been at this close. Maybe I could just walk around this world with this little secret and nobody will know about it.
But more often, the women talk things out on their own.
I know that I live with the fear of not dying of AIDS, but looking like I'm dying of AIDS. Yeah. Developing outward
appearances,
like the body change.
Where people can tell, you
That's
know?
what scares the hell out of me.
Okay, he's been positive for 22 years. Even though he looks good, but he's got that buffalo hump, you know, I'm going, God, I hope I don't get that.
Elizabeth, Betty, and Precious have all become AIDS activists, outspoken about their own HIV status and how they're often treated as a result.
I remember this lady, her name was also Elizabeth. Every time she would see me every once in a while, she says, oh my God, you're still alive. You know, and she just died like 6 months ago, she died.
All three women say they're very careful about who they let into their lives these days. Precious is one of the many women infected by someone she trusted. In her case, it was a boyfriend she dated for over a year who'd been vague about results of an HIV test.
I asked him if he had taken an HIV test, and he told me yes, one came back positive and the other one came back negative. And I didn't bother to pressure him to get another test. I didn't want to probe too much because I didn't want to be rejected. He stated that he didn't like using condoms, so don't ask him. So I didn't.
Her boyfriend started using drugs and wound up being arrested. He broke the news that he was definitely HIV positive in a letter from prison.
He wrote me from the penitentiary and told me that he tested positive for HIV and that I should go get tested. I kind of knew that I was going to be positive because we never used condoms when we had sex. Never.
Only 26 at the time, Precious did have someone to lean on in the early days of her ordeal. She says her mother was supportive from day one.
I think she was devastated when she found out that I was positive, but she didn't show it though. She told me she was hurt, you know, that she never would think that, you know, her baby would become positive. But she said no matter what, she'll be here for me.
Sadly, her mother passed away.
Sometimes I think about being really sick and being sick by myself. There are days when I get overwhelmed and I can't call her to tell her how my day went and to get her suggestion or advice on how to deal with certain things.
Still, Precious considers herself lucky. She has friends who care about her, a job she loves at Women Alive. She's even on AIDS awareness posters.
There you go.
Give me your attitude, Precious. Come on.
You ain't got the attitude.
Give me that Precious attitude.
Show them that black woman's attitude you got.
And now she also has a boyfriend who's not infected, knows she is HIV positive, and treats her with respect and sensitivity.
And his thing was like, it's more important for him to make me laugh and to be able to make me happy than in the bed.
Perhaps surprisingly, she says she's never held a grudge against the man who infected her.
I was a little upset, but I also knew I couldn't blame him because I had a role to play in this. And the role that I played in was not protecting myself.
Betty has also decided not to blame anyone else for her situation. But when she first got her diagnosis, she went into a tailspin. Betty's life was already a mess. Addicted to drugs, she'd burned a lot of bridges. Abused as a child, she says she smoked crack to numb the pain.
I kind of suppressed it all the way up to about 15 is when I started to actually get high.
During the years she was on drugs, Betty says she was also a sex addict.
It didn't make a difference how I got it. I just wanted it. So I didn't care who it was. I wasn't in an actual relationship.
She has no idea who infected her or when it may have happened.
I don't have a clue who it was. I don't have a clue.
Betty says her lifestyle has changed dramatically. She's in a serious relationship now with someone who does not have HIV.
He's not positive.
He's not positive. You know, even though my family knows.
Do you guys
it's a difference. You know, no, we haven't had sex in quite a while. But,
okay.
You know.
Betty recently graduated from a year-long program for HIV-positive recovering drug addicts.
Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Betty Knox.
I got it. I made it through.
Most of her classmates were men facing some of the same struggles she's been through.
On graduation day.
We need you not just to survive, but to excel. We need you to lead. We need you to take your experience, having proven you can beat the odds in this program, and apply it.
Betty does plan to apply what she's learned.
I want to thank my higher power first. I really do.
She won a special award for her tenacity.
Woo, I was not looking for this, y'all, but woo.
And she's determined to stay on the right path.
I've been here a short time, but I've come a long way.
Elizabeth has come a long way too, but like her friends, she's still got her work cut out for her.
It's rice a little bit, you throw in the steak.
And for Elizabeth, it might be a bit more complicated. One of her sons is grown, but she still has two younger kids to raise, including the daughter she gave birth to while still abusing drugs and alcohol.
She was 2 pounds, 10 ounces at birth. I was on the streets during my whole pregnancy, smoking crack, drinking alcohol, and prostituting and sleeping in different places and still hitchhiking to different cities.
This is Elizabeth's daughter now, 14 years old, healthy and beautiful, and worried about her mom.
Just like
her sleeping or something, just dying out in her sleep, and then me not be able to be there. Like I might be over at my friend's house or something.
Like most teenagers, she and her mom have many disagreements.
It gets me frustrated because then, like if I'm trying to help her, why is she not taking that advice? Because she knows I'm right, she just doesn't want to listen.
Unlike most, their biggest arguments are about Elizabeth's decision to stop taking her HIV medication.
She hasn't told the doctor. She doesn't even tell her sponsor. Because she knows her sponsor will be like, you better take it. And then she doesn't want to take it. Yeah, I told her. I don't know if she don't want to listen to me. Guess I'm not important.
You know what it is? That my hair has been falling out.
So what? It's better to be alive than your hair being falling out.
I know, but my hair is falling out.
So?
So I'm concerned about,
your looks. Well, most likely.
Yeah, what's wrong with being concerned about my looks? I mean, I don't want to be bald-headed a year from now.
A year? What about if a year doesn't pass?
You mean if I don't make it to a year because I'm not taking my meds? I'll make it. I'll be all right. It's just temporary. I just don't want, this is just for a little while. So.
A little while?
Yeah,
a little while could
just
make
for a few months. And then
a few months?
In this close-knit family, there are few secrets. Hazel and her 12-year-old brother have known the facts about HIV for years, even though they didn't always understand them.
It's like, oh, I have some disease called HIV, and you can't cure it, and then I was just like, I didn't know what she was talking about because I didn't get it. And then when I grew up, like around 10 or something, then I started to get it more.
Elizabeth feels the only way to keep her kids safe is to teach them early about using condoms for protection, although she hopes her two youngest don't become sexually active for a while. According to Hazel, so far, so good.
Because then I'll break their hands if they do anything.
Hazel knows two other kids whose moms are also HIV positive. Despite that, some of her friends don't seem concerned about the spread of AIDS and might not be willing to wait to have sex or insist on condoms when they do.
Sometimes they might just be like, oh, if I don't do this, then he's not going to think that I like him or something. And I just tell him, if he thinks that that's the only way, then to show him other ways instead of doing any sexual thing with them.
It's a lot to think about at such a young age.
Oh, God.
Elizabeth doesn't want her kids to have to carry the burden alone, and that sometimes keeps her up nights.
When you're HIV positive, you're on a time budget because it's not telling what's going to happen. I mean, I've seen people look as good as I look, and suddenly they get pneumonia and they die. I'm hoping that I can stretch out to maybe another 15 years, and I calculate their ages by that time, and hopefully by then they'll be prepared.
For now, she just wants her kids to have fun like anyone else.
I remember one time we went to this restaurant to eat.
Chicken is.
And I got you guys sandwiches made out of
fish.
Nope, it was brain.
Oh.
Cow brain.
Like most of her friends who are living with HIV, Elizabeth tries to focus on the positive instead of dwelling on what could go wrong. She doesn't think there'll be a cure in time to help her, but if there is...
If there was a cure, I would be so happy.
And I'm sad to say that the issues surrounding HIV and AIDS impact on African American women, as well as other women of color, have not abated in over 20 years. African American women, since the inception of the pandemic, have been disproportionately impacted. AIDS is currently the leading cause of death for African American women aged 25 to 34. In 2000, African Americans, both men and women, accounted for over 50% of the 40,000 estimated new cases of HIV in the United States. The current AIDS case rate for African American women is almost 20 times greater than the rate for white women. And in 2001, African American women accounted for nearly 64% of AIDS cases reported among women in the United States. These numbers are not going down, but over the years have been increasing at an exponential rate. African American women are at greatest risk to a multitude of risk factors, including some of the things that were shared in the video, but greatest among them is having unprotected sex with one or multiple partners, the chronic substance abuse problem in the African American community, as well as having high rates of sexually transmitted diseases. It is very appropriate that the theme for World AIDS Day this year is women, girls, and HIV and AIDS, because globally, women and girls represent over 50% of the cases of AIDS in the world. Until women's social and economic status is changed and enhanced, and women are able to safely negotiate safer sex, and men take greater responsibility in their social and economic interactions with women, these numbers will not decrease. Everyone has a role to play in combating HIV and AIDS on a local, national, and international basis. We all have to be our brothers and sisters' keepers. There is power in one person's focus and concerted action to stem the tide of HIV and AIDS. One person can make a difference. My challenge to those of you here today is to make a commitment to make a difference. Get involved locally, nationally, and internationally. Adopt an AIDS orphan. Pay for one person's HIV/AIDS drug treatment in a developing country. Send an aid packet. Buy a doll of hope for a woman or child affected or infected with HIV. We cannot afford to be complacent or fail to act. Get involved and get involved today. Thank you.
Okay, we're almost there. We know stigma and discrimination continue to drive the epidemic, and we know that education is one of the key defenses against the continuing HIV epidemic. With that said, we have one more 30-second PSA for you that's going to roll. That was actually culled from the videos we took in making that last video. Again, we hope it's just another educational tool we can use. So if we could roll that PSA.
I never thought it would happen to me.
I never thought it would happen to me.
I never thought
It would happen
To me.
to me. To me.
to me.
I can't believe it happened to my mom.
Stop the spread of HIV. Get the facts. Protect yourself. Join the fight against HIV and AIDS.
Like that, we want to make sure to get out into the community. That said, again, to the brave women of East Los Angeles Women's Center, Minority AIDS Project, and Women Alive, thank you for your work. You have been heard, and the city of Los Angeles is truly making the commitment. Thank you all for joining us today on the commemoration of World AIDS Day.
are watching LA City View, Channel 35. Your city, your channel.
We now join our scheduled program in progress.